Let's go and check in on the Sixers and, well, Ben Simmons, of course. The news continues to change almost daily now, Paul. Paul Hudrick is with us from 97.3 ESPN.com. And, of course, we know from earlier the reports that the Sixers are engaging in talks, and there was reports that the interest has been robust. But apparently Dame Lillard is going to make an announcement that he would like to be traded from Portland. So how crazy do you think it's about to get, Paul?
It's only going to get crazier. I know that. It's not going to get any less crazy. Because I know Dame Lillard's about to talk, and no matter what he says, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it kind of doesn't matter. I guess if he comes out and demands a trade, that's certainly a statement, and that certainly affects things in one way. But if he comes out and says no and denies that report that came out and says, no, I'm not demanding a trade, that doesn't mean he's not, first of all, maybe secretly demanding it behind the scenes, or two, he just doesn't want to ruin Portland's leverage. So he doesn't want to be a jerk about it. He does have mutual respect for that city and the fan base and the organization. So he doesn't want to say anything that's maybe going to hurt them. I don't imagine that he's going to come out and demand a trade today, but I imagine he's going to say enough. And even the Chris Haynes interview that just came out not that long ago, he hinted that things aren't great there, and that there needs to be some serious changes. So I don't suspect it gets any less crazy over these coming weeks. I imagine Ben Simmons' name is going to be thrown out a lot, and Dame Lillard's name's also going to be out there an awful lot.
Yeah, and let me ask you, I like Dame Lillard a lot. I think he would be amazing with Joel Embiid. But do you give up anything possible to get that player, or is there a threshold for you?
For me, no, absolutely not. You get Dame Lillard in here with Joel Embiid, you figure the rest out. You make it work one way or another. I would say that if you're Daryl Morey, of course you have a walking away point of some kind. I don't know what that is. Whether that's I'm only willing to give out X amount of first-round picks, or I'm only willing to give you one of Tyrese Maxey or Matisse Thybulle and not both. Like there's every good executive, you do have to have a walking away point. What that is for Daryl Morey, I'm not sure. It would hurt. I mean, I personally would still do it, but it would hurt to give up both Tyrese Maxey and Matisse Thybulle, especially Thybulle, because you're going to need, if you're going to move on from Ben Simmons and you're going to bring Dame Lillard in here, you're kind of going to need Matisse Thybulle because you need defense. And that, if you're going into next season and you're starting backcourt as Dame Lillard and Seth Curry, good luck defensively, because that's not great. So that's it. I would say, yeah, one, you need to have a walking away point, but two, if you're going to give up those players, you need to have some type of contingency plan to mitigate what you're going to lose on the defensive end of the floor. So, yeah, a lot of moving parts. But to me, like I said, get Dame Lillard in here and figure the rest out, because that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have the same sentiment, is that, hey, you get him here and you figure out the rest. But I agree with the one thing you said is, if I have to pick, like, hey, I'll give you Maxey, I'm not giving you Thybulle, because defensively, with Dame Lillard 6'2" and Seth Curry, you're going to have some issues in that backcourt.
No, 100%. And then on top of that, you're giving up a player in Ben Simmons who, say whatever you want about him, he was second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. You could argue he could have won it. You see what he did against Trae Young in the playoffs, that no other team was really able to do, no other player was able to do to that extent. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to lose a lot defensively if you give up Ben Simmons and you take on Damian Lillard, who is as talented as they come offensively. You could, again, argue that he is maybe the best scoring guard in the entire NBA right now. But with that, you're going to take a hit on defense. So you need to make sure that you're going to have the supplemental pieces. Now, with that said, Mike, let's say you give up Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey. If you have to give up both, there are going to be veteran players lining up to sign minimum contracts to come here, because you already have those two special players in Joel Embiid and Damian Lillard. If you have those guys, you're going to get guys who want to come here that can fill those roles, that can be 3-and-D guys, that can play defense. whether that's like, what a guy like I don't know, Trevor Ariza, Avery Bradley. Like, yeah, those names aren't sexy, but they can fill in those gaps because you don't need them to be stars. You have stars. So I think you can help mitigate that if you did have to give up both of those young players.
Yeah, you wonder how much of what Brooklyn did. I know they didn't get out, and they lost their two big guys. I mean, they lost Harden, essentially, and Kyrie. If you lose players of that magnitude, it doesn't matter who your role players are. You're probably not making it very far. But how much did seeing that, hey, we invested in these three stars, and the rest of the guys we didn't really care too much about, how much will that change the perception of, okay, it doesn't matter. If we have Joel Embiid, Dame Lillard, and Tobias Harris, we're okay with some veteran guys just filling roles.
Yeah, and listen, the Brooklyn Nets came within, Kevin Durant's big toe of being in the Eastern Conference Finals with all those injuries you talked about. And yeah, that's what it boils down to, Mike. Like if Dame Lillard or Joel Embiid, if the Sixers were able to get Dame Lillard, if one of them gets hurt, it doesn't matter what the rest of the team looks like because you're not winning anything. And that goes for any team in the NBA. The Milwaukee Bucks, if they had to go a long I understand they won a game without Giannis, but they had to go a long stretch. Like if they didn't, you already see what he's doing in this series against the Suns. If they had to play the NBA Finals without Giannis, they would not be winning any games. They would have gotten swept. And they would be in a lot of trouble if they didn't have Chris Middleton or Drew Holiday. Yeah, that's just the way the NBA is now. It is a star-focused league. You need to have star players. So yeah, I get kind of the sentiment, like, look what happened to Brooklyn because their star guys got hurt. But I think any team, again, the Phoenix Suns, if you took Chris Paul or Devin Booker out of the lineup for an extended period, they would lose games too. It's just the reality of the league that I cover and the league that we all watch. It's star driven.
Yep.
So to me, that's why I would do it, because I want to optimize the star power.
I want to ask you, I don't know if you heard Israel Gutierrez on the Greg Cody podcast recently. I don't know if you heard any of the comments that he had to say, but, not the most, well, I'll let you decide for yourself. He said, quote, "I don't think I'm breaking any news here, but people don't like Ben Simmons in the league. His teammates don't like Ben. There's just something about him. He's an unlikable dude. And in that locker room, he's unlikable." Is that something that you feel as well? You've been around this team for years. Do you get the feeling that the people in that locker room don't like Ben Simmons?
I wouldn't say that they don't like him. I think that might be an exaggeration. I can understand why some people don't like him. I get it. I get how he could rub some people the wrong way. He's kind of sarcastic. He's kind of got a sense of humor like that. He likes to, bust stones with reporters, and like, especially, some of the older guys, he kind of goes after them a little bit, and they don't really care for that. So I get it. And I can understand why maybe some people don't like Ben Simmons as a dude, basically, as a person. But I would say not that I don't think anyone on the team necessarily feels like, oh, I don't like Ben Simmons. I think that he doesn't really have necessarily any, like, the way that Joel Embiid and Jimmy Butler really bonded. I don't think Ben Simmons has that with anybody on this team in particular. I know he actually got very close with James Ennis when he was still here. They became very close friends. I would say, if anything, Mike, I think some guys, whether they're here now or whether they're not here, I think some guys didn't like the way that the team handled Ben Simmons, for a lack of a better term. They don't like the way that maybe he was sometimes handled with kid gloves, because that's the reality, is that before Doc Rivers got here, I think there was some of that. So I think I'm sure that rubbed some players the wrong way. But to say to me that he's just this unlikable guy that nobody likes, I mean, I can't go there, because I think he's done a lot for the you talk to the young guys, and it's unsolicited, whether it's Tyrese Maxey or whether it's Matisse Thybulle. They talk about how much they like Ben and how much Ben has helped them and how much they've learned from Ben. So I think that sentiment is a little extreme, the unlikable thing, at least from a teammate standpoint. But I will say that I don't know that he's like best friends with anybody on the team, or like he's like real close to anybody.
And that's probably by choice.
Right, sure. He keeps his circle very tight. That's part. Kawhi Leonard's the same way. Kawhi Leonard keeps his circle really tight. And a lot of people would probably tell you that Kawhi Leonard's not a very likable guy. But to me, I don't think that's that big of a deal at all. I think A team that would be trading for him, they're not trading for him to be anyone's best friend. They're trading for him. They're trying to win basketball games. And I think Ben Simmons can help a team do that.
Well, and that was my follow-up. So then if you're another team and you were to hear, hey, this guy's unlikable, does that prevent you from wanting to make a deal?
Well, I think in any trade that's going to be like this seismic and you're bringing in a person out, like a quote-unquote all-star player, you're going to get the opinions of your star players that are already on the team and your veterans that are already on the team. So I look at one team that, that we've heard a lot of rumors about is Minnesota. He actually has a good relationship with Karl Anthony Towns, despite the headlock and the peacemaker situation with Joel Embiid. Him and Karl Anthony Towns are actually friends off the court. They get along. I believe it's the same with D'Angelo Russell, who, he might have to be involved in a Ben Simmons trade, but it's not like Ben Simmons doesn't have guys around the league that he's close with. Obviously, the video game stuff, like Ben's very big into video games, and there's a lot of guys in the league that are big in video games, and he's made friends in that regard. So I think, I don't think it's going to hurt a team, especially if you're selling to, again, if it's Minnesota and you're Gerson Rosas and you're trying to sell, hey, Karl, I think this guy can help us. This guy can put us over the top. This guy can make us a playoff team. I can't imagine a player objecting to that. So no, I really don't think it hurts the Sixers from a leverage standpoint. And I don't think it hurts Ben Simmons that a team like whatever wouldn't want him. Because I think, again, comes down to the fact that he's going to help a team win basketball games. That's all that matters.
Yeah. In like a lot of the, it's funny because a lot of people wondering what kind of interest will be in Ben. And it looks like, as the report says, it's robust. But, a lot of the teams I look at are like Midwestern teams, smaller market teams that Mark Stein reported, Indiana, Minnesota. And to me, those are teams, as you kind of said the other day, they can't get a star. How do they get them? Okay, this is way. One guy is looking for a change of scenery. But, it made me kind of think a little bit more on that. Like, some of these teams, like, make the deal for business reasons, maybe not even basketball reasons. Like, hey, we can't find a star. We don't want to tank. Let's get this guy. So the problem with those teams, though, Paul, is they don't have a lot to give you. You don't want to be going to a team asking for a lot of draft picks, right? You don't want draft picks back in a deal. You want established players. That's why those Midwestern smaller market teams might not make any sense.
Right. Well, it makes sense if you're getting another team involved. If it's the Minnesota Timberwolves, yeah, there's nothing really on that Timberwolves roster that interests me. Honestly, the only player that would interest me would be Anthony Edwards, but his timeline, he's just so young. And I don't think the Timberwolves are in any hurry to move him because I think they view him as a part of their future. And if they were getting Ben Simmons, they would want him to be a part of that. So, yeah, to me, it would have to be a third team involved. And whether that's, I don't know, name a team to get the Chicago Bulls to get Zach LaVine here. Whether that's the Wizards, who, again, Ben Simmons probably wouldn't be a great fit on the Wizards. But if you can work around a three-team trade where Bradley Beal ends up in Philadelphia, Ben Simmons ends up in Minnesota, and a bunch of draft picks end up in DC, along with, I don't know, Malik Beasley or someone like that, then that seems like a more tenable situation. So that's why you can't kind of rule out some of these teams that maybe can't get a star. Or even so let's say a team like Portland, let's say Dame Lillard. If you're Portland, if you're Neil Olshey, where else are you going to get a multi-time all-star and a team that, you know what I mean? Like, that has all the ingredients that makes sense. Because let's be realistic. If Portland loses Dame Lillard, how the heck are they going to get another all-star in the building? The only reason they have all-stars in the building is because they drafted them. Yeah. So, from that standpoint, if you're Neil Olshey, and to your point about, selling tickets, if Ben Simmons is still young, he's an exciting player when he is right. You put him in a place like Portland, and it has a pretty loyal fan base.
Yeah.
If they get behind him, that could be a really good boon for them. Not to say it's going to be fair value because you're talking about Dame Lillard, but yeah, I think there are scenarios that make sense with some of those smaller market teams where they're getting a Ben Simmons, where that does help attendance, where that does help maybe give a promise for the future. And then there are ways for the Sixers to also get players that benefit them in that type of deal.
Yep, I think that'll be interesting, and we talked about Sacramento and the possibility of them, whatever they could give up. Toronto was another name mentioned. What do you think would be interesting from Toronto?
I don't know. I've seen some people say Siakam. I don't love that fit when you already have Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid. I like Siakam, but I don't like. I would want a guard. I would probably want Van Vliet. Or if there's a way that I can get the Kyle Lowry sign and trade, but I'd probably want more than that. I know we discussed that the other day, and I kind of said I was on the fence about it. But I think in a sign and trade scenario where I'm also giving Kyle Lowry a new contract, I would want more if I'm giving up Ben Simmons in that regard. So I don't know what kind of sweetener they could add on top of Kyle Lowry, whether that's picks, whether that's, I don't know. Again, those guys are the guys on the roster that intrigue me the most, whether it's probably Van Vliet is the guy that would probably, just to sum it up, that would be the guy if I'm looking at Toronto's roster and I'm not looking at Kyle Lowry in a sign and trade, Van Vliet would be the guy I'd have most interest in. And even that, I'm not sure that's a great one-for-one deal.
All right, Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick. More on the Sixers offseason as well coming up. They got the NBA Finals on Saturday night. So Bucks in 6 has been the chant. You feeling it?
No, I think it's going 7. I really do, because I think this is what happens in playoff series, though. You know what I mean? Like the tide turns. Like the first 2 games, it looked like no one could beat the Suns. Then last game, it looks like the Suns couldn't get out of their own way, which is rare for the Suns. The Suns don't do that. The Suns do not beat themselves. That is a rare thing that you see. But credit to the Bucks, credit to Drew Holiday defensively and the job he's done. Credit to their, to Giannis and how great he's been. That block was one of the most insane plays I've ever seen. It was crazy, and to do it on that stage. So yeah, I just think the tide always turns in a playoff series, especially the finals. So I could easily see the Suns winning Game 5, then the Bucks winning Game 6, and it going Game 7. I think it's going 7. I still kind of lean towards the Suns because of what I referenced. They don't make mistakes. That was such an atypical game for them in Game 4, and I don't see them, and I don't see Chris Paul having another game like that. I think Suns in 7 would be my guess.
All right, you like Suns in 7. I'm so torn on this, man. I said it would be 2-2, and then I thought it would get down to this spot here. I'm starting to like the Bucks a little bit more. I like what they've done defending Chris Paul and challenging him full court almost, like making him have to work to get the ball up the court, and he's been turning the ball over. I mean, that's where you wonder how much wear and tear on those legs. Can he handle it? So I'm feeling the Bucks right. Middleton was great the other night, and that's where, like, I was saying this the other day, Paul, it's like Giannis is like Embiid. He'll score 35, but late in the game, he's not like the greatest piece late. But that's where Middleton checks in. And even though Middleton had 31, that's where I think the Sixers lack the most, is Embiid can get you 35 to 40, but in the last 45 seconds or 2 minutes, really, that's where Tobias Harris needs to maybe take over, and I don't think he's equipped to take over. He can get you 20, but those 20 are going to come in the first 3 quarters and, 8 minutes of the fourth. That's where Middleton, I think, has found his niche, and that's where it's like Giannis can get you 40, but in the last 2 minutes, it's your turn. That's what I think the Sixers lack. They have the guy to get them 40. Who's the guy that gets those last 2-minute points?
No, it all comes down to shot creation. I've been saying that for a while, and when you're in those guts of the game, especially in the playoffs, that's what it's all about. It's a guy who you can just give the ball to and say, go get me a bucket. And both of these teams that are in the finals have that. They have, the Bucks have, like you said, when Middleton is right, Middleton's really good at creating his own offense. Drew Holiday, to an extent, when he's asked to do it, he can do it. Like you said, Giannis probably not down the stretch, but throughout the course of the game, he sure as heck can create his own offense. And then the Suns have 2 guys in Booker and Chris Paul that can do that. And even Campaign off the bench creates a little bit, can create offense and do some things in that regard. So, the Sixers don't really have, they kind of have one guy who could do that. And that's Tyrese Maxey, and it's a 20-year-old rookie. So that's I think that's an excellent point. That's what they sorely lack. They lack a shot creator that can, at the end of the game, you give him the ball, you say, go get me a bucket. And this finals is proving that you need guys like that.
Paul Hudrick, more on the Sixers, of course, all offseason. It's going to be crazy, we think, and the draft is coming up as well. We'll get into draft conversation at Paul Hudrick on Twitter, and he joined me here on this Happy Hour Friday. All right, Paul, enjoy the rest of the weekend.
You as well, Mike. Take care, man.
All right, there's Paul Hudrick giving us some insight on what he thinks could happen with Ben Simmons